Yeah. Hi, we are back with recording today's story of from R.K. Narayan's book Malgudi Days. This is a compilation of short stories written by R.K. Narayan during the early part of the 20th century. This is 2025. It is in the 21st century, quite a many years after he has written it. So these stories take us back to a time around this 100 or 150 years ago in the past, where times were different. The situation was different. The way people dealt with one another was different. There were so many paradigms which have been lost, which we are not aware of. So it's hoped that reading these stories will help us to communicate the position, the way of life which used to exist in those days, about 150 years ago. Now, this is a collection of stories by R.K. Narayan, who was a very well known writer in those days. And no, he was during the earlier part of this century, within the last 100 years, and the time period relating to which his stories tell us is about 150 years ago. So he wrote to us about a distant past, and he was also not too near. He was around 70 to 100 years ago, and we are reading it today. So we are spanning about 150 years in this entire exercise. The, this is a collection of short stories by name Malgudi Days by R.K. Narayan, and this story we are reading is titled A Willing Slave. Let me start. No one in the house knew her name. No one for a moment thought that she had any name other than Aya. None of the children ever knew when she had first come into the family, the eldest being just 6 months old when she entered service. Now he was 17 and studied in a college. There were 5 children after him, and the last was 4 years old. The ayah repeatedly renewed her infancy with each one of them, kept pace with them till they left, till they left her behind and marched forward. And then she slipped back to the youngest and grew up with him or her. It might be said that the limit to which she could go in years was 6. If she stepped it beyond that boundary, she proved herself a blundering nuisance. For instance, how hard it was for her to conduct herself in the servant world, which consisted of the cook, 2 men servants, a maid servant, a gardener, and an unpaid assistant. Their jokes fell flat on her. Their discussions did not interest her, and she reported to her mistress everything that she heard. She was the eyes and ears of her mistress. The gardener very nearly lost his job once for his opinions of his master, which was duly conveyed by the ayah. She was fairly unpopular in the servants' quarters. She constituted herself a timekeeper, and those who came late for work could not escape her notice. The moment a latecomer was sighted, the old woman would let out such a scream, demanding an explanation, that the mistress of the house would come out and levy a fine. This was an entirely self imposed task, just as she also kept an eye on the home tutor who came in the mornings and taught children arithmetic and English. The ayah hovered about all the time the teacher was present, for she had a suspicion that he would molest the children. She viewed all teachers as her enemies and all schools as prison houses. She thought it was a cruel perversity that made the people send children to school. She remembered how her two children, now they are grandfathers, how they used to come home and demand 3 pies for buying some herb, a paste of which was indispensable for preparing their skins for the next day's pinching and caning. So they would buy that herb and then put it on their skin so that the teacher's caning will not hurt them too much. They said that the school inspector himself had ordered the purchase of the herb. It was a part of their education. She had asked once or twice, "Why do you stand there and allow yourself to be beaten?" "We have got to do it," the boys answered. "It's a part of our studies. It seems that our teachers won't get their wages unless they cause us certain number of times, unless they cane us certain number of times a year." The old woman had no occasion to know more about teachers, and so she kept a watch over the home tutor. If he so much as raised his voice, she checked him with, don't you try any of your tricks with these angels. They are no ordinary children. If you do anything, my master will lock you up in jail. Be careful." So she would warn the tutor. Her other self-imposed tasks were to see that the baker's boy didn't cycle onto the lawn, that the newspaper man didn't drop the paper into the nursery, and that the servant didn't doze off in the afternoon. She also attended on guests, took charge of their clothes, and acted as an intermediary between them and the washing boy. And above all, when everyone in the house was out, she shut and bolted all the doors, sat down on the front porch, and acted as watchman. So she was all in all bundled into one. These were all her secondary duties. Her main job, for which she received 2 meals a day, 15 rupees a month, and 3 saris a year, kept her active for over 12 hours in a day. So that was the ayah. That's a very good description of the ayah, and this seems to have been the case in every household in India in 150 years ago. Because I remember my own grandmother's house where this was the way it was. She had a woman called Icha, who she did not live in the house. She never slept there. She went to her own home to sleep. But she would be here at the break of day. When she woke up, she would be there, sweeping all the sand and gravel in the vast front yard and side yards of the house, so that not a speck of any twig or branch or leaf or crumpled paper would lie anywhere. Everything was neat and spick and span. And she would put water around the Tulsi Madam in front of the house. And she would put flowers in the Tulsi Madam. And she would be doing various duties around the house because she took care of the house. That was Icha, who was the equivalent of this ayah. And all the other descriptions which you see here, it was Icha who took care of it. Icha would know what item to order from Thomas' shop, what task Shangoni has to do, what things the Atai has to prepare for the children. Everything she will know. And she will inform them and make sure they do it. Though she was not the recognized or the authorized person. She would take care of all those things. Now we proceed. At 6 in the morning, Radha, the last child of the house, shouted from her bed upstairs, Aya! And the Aya would run up the stairs as fast as her size permitted, because Radha would not give more than a quarter of an hour's interval between shouts. And now, when the Aya stood near the cot and parted the mosquito net, Radha would ask, Where were you, Aya? Here all the time, my darling, Aya would say. Were you here all night? Of course I was. Were you sleeping or sitting up? Oh, would I lie down when my Radha was sleeping? I was sitting up with a knife in my hand. If any bad men had tried to come near you, I would have chopped off their heads. Oh, where is the knife? I just went down to put it away. Won't you let me have a look at the knife, Aya? Oh, no, no. Children must never see it. When you grow up into a big girl, when you are tall enough to touch the lock of that almirah, I will show you the knife. Would you like to be very tall? Yes, yes, I can then open the almirah and take the biscuits myself. Isn't it so, Aya? Yes, 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 but you will never be tall if you stay in bed in the mornings. You must get up, wash and drink milk, and you will see how very fast you will grow. 3 days ago, you were so high because you got up without giving me any trouble. After drinking a glass of milk, Radha would run into the garden and suggest that they play trains. The Ayah now had to take out a tricycle and a doll. Radha sat on the tricycle, clasping the doll to her bosom, and the Ayah bent nearly double and pushed the tricycle. The tricycle was the train. The flower pots were the stations, and the circular fun house was Bangalore. Aya was the engine driver, the doll was Radha, and Radha was her mother. Sometimes, the man who commanded the train to stop or go. Now and then, Aya stopped to take out her pouch and put a piece of tobacco into her mouth. Why is the train stopped? Demanded Radha. The screw is loose. I am fitting it up, said the Ayah. You are chewing? Yes, but it is not tobacco. It's a medicine for headache. I bought it from the medicine seller at the station. Is there a medicine seller there? Yes, yes, said the Ayah and pointed to the jasmine bush. Radha looked at the bush and said, Oh, sellers, give me some good medicine for my poor Ayah. She has such a bad headache. Doctor? At Bangalore, the train stopped for a long time. There, the Ayah was asked to lie down and sleep on a patch of sand, and Radha went round the town with the child. The game went on till Radha's mother called her in for a bath, and after that, the Ayah was free for an hour or more. At midday, she squatted amidst the toys in the nursery, her immense figure contrasting grotesquely with the tiny elephants and horses, cooking vessels and dolls around her. She and Radha sat a yard apart, but each was in her own house. They cooked, performed puja, and called on each other. It was easy for Radha to spring up and pay Aya a visit, but it would be an extreme torture for the Aya to return the call in the same manner. And so, if the Aya stooped forward, it was accepted as a visit. After playing this game for an hour or so, the Aya felt drowsy and said, Radha, night has come. Let us go to bed so that we may get up early in the morning. Is it already night? Asked Radha. Yes, it is. I lit the lamp hours ago, replied the Aya, indicating the same knick-knack which stood for the lamp. Good night, Aya. You must also lie down. The Aya cleared a space for herself and lay down. Are you asleep, Aya? You first play sleep and not real. The Aya said every 5 minutes. And very soon Radha fell asleep. The Aya's duties commenced again at 4 o'clock. Radha kept her running continuously till 8, when she had to be carried off to her bed. In bed, she had to have her stories. The ayah squatted below the cot and narrated the story of the black monkey, which rolled in a sack of chalk powder and became white, and married a princess. At the wedding, somebody sprinkled water on him, and he came out in his true color. He was chased out. Presently, a dhobi took pity on him and washed him and bleached him and ironed him, in which state he regained the affection of the princess. When the story was over, Radha said, I don't like to sleep. Let us play something. So they had to play something. I asked, do you want the old fellow in? The mention of the old fellow worked wonders, and child after child was kept in terror of him. He was supposed to be locked up in a disused dog kennel in the compound. He was always shouting for the ayah. He was ever ready to break the door open and carry her away. The ayah always referred to him in scathing language. I have beaten that scoundrel into pulp. Very bad fellow, disgusting monkey. He won't leave me in peace even for a moment. If you don't sleep, how can I find time to go and kick him back into his house? Once in 3 months, Aya oiled and combed her hair and put on a bright sari, bade everyone in the house an elaborate goodbye, and started for Saidapet. There she had her home. The only evidence others had of her far-off home was the presence of a couple of rowdy-looking men in the backyard of the bungalow at the beginning of every month. The ayah spoke of them as those Saidapet robbers. Why do you encourage them? Asked her mistress once. What can I do? It is the price I pay for having borne them for 9 months. And she received her month's pay and divided most of it between them. So old, so clumsy, and so very unwieldy, it was often a wonder to others how she was going to get in and out of buses, reach Saidapet and return. But she would be back by evening, bringing a secret gift of peppermints for Radha. The secret because she had often been warned not to give unclean sweets to the children. Once she went to Saidapet and did not return in the evening. Radha stood on the porch, gazing at the gate. Even the next day, there was no sign of her. No sign of her. Radha wept. Her mothers and others were furious. Her mother and others were furious. She was perhaps being run over and killed, they said. Such a blundering blind fool. I'm surprised it didn't happen before. She must have taken it into her head to give herself a holiday suddenly. Suddenly, I'll dismiss to have taken a holiday suddenly. I'll dismiss her for this. No one is indispensable. These old servants take too much for granted. They must be taught a lesson. 3 days later, Aya stood before the lady of the house and saluted her. The lady was half glad to see her and half angry. You'll never get leave again, or you may go away once and for all. Why didn't you return in time? The ayah laughed uncontrollably. Even her dark face was flushed, and her eyes were so bright with the laughter. Why do you laugh, you idiot? What is the matter? The ayah covered her face with her sari and mumbled, He has come, and she giggled. Who? The old fellow. At the mention of the old fellow, Radha, who had all the time been tightly hugging the ayah, freed herself, ran into the kitchen and shut the door. Who is the old fellow? Asked the lady. I can't tell his name, the ayah said shyly. Your husband? Yes, said ayah, and right awkwardly. He wants me to cook for him and look after him. The man was there when I went home. He sat as if he has never gone out of the house. He gave me a fright. Madam, he is out there in the garden. Please, won't you look at him? The lady went out and saw a wizened old man standing in the drive. Salute our lady, don't stand there and blink, the ayah said. The old man raised his arm stiffly and salaamed. He said, I want Thai. It seemed odd to hear the ayah being called by her name. I want Thai. She is to cook for me. She must go with me, he said sullenly. You want to go, ayah? The ayah averted her face and shook with laughter. He went away years ago. He was in Ceylon in tea gardens. How could anyone know he was coming? The Sarkar sent him back. Who will take care of him now? Half an hour later, she walked out of the house, led by a husband proud of his slave. She took leave in a most touching and ceremonious manner of everyone except Radha, who refused to come out of the kitchen. When the ayah stood outside the kitchen door and begged her to come out, Radha asked, Is the old fellow carrying you off? Yes, dear bad fellow, ayah said. Who left the door of the doghouse open? No one, he broke it open. What does he want? He wants to carry me off, said the ayah. I won't come out till he has gone. All right, go before he comes out here for you. The ayah acted on this advice after waiting at the kitchen door for nearly half an hour. So that's the end of the story. The old fellow then carries the ayah away, and then she goes away to her house. That's the end of the story. This story is called A Willing Slave. So the ayah is a willing, no, is it called a willing slave? Yes, a willing slave. So that is today's story. I hope you liked it. Okay, bye.